okay that. If I leave my mat out, I think James purposefully steps on it. Like, he's like, why do you leave this out? There's like footprints all over it. All right, enough of that. So the blocks will be, it doesn't matter where they are right now, but you will use your belt. So have that close by. And then lower down onto your back. Taking a moment, we're going to probably spend a little less time on breath than we normally do today, because there's a lot that we can explore in the body today. So today is more of a body day than a breath day, but definitely mindful. So allow your knees to rest in towards each other as your feet separate wider. Taking the time to adjust, to feel grounded, supported, even. If it helps, you can bring one hand to your lower belly and one hand to your upper belly. Just to feel the movement evenly between these two spaces. Creating a sense of belly breathing. Keeping the breath natural in its normal state. And then bringing the hands over to the sides of your rib cage. And breathing out towards the heels of your hand, finding more of that abdominal diaphragmatic breath, so more of the expansion of the rib cage outward rather than forward. And feeling as you exhale this gentle drawing of the transverse abdominis in order to knit the ribs in and the hip points in. So this core breath, this abdominal diaphragmatic breath, helps to stabilize the spine in neutral. So just noticing a slight lifting of the lower back away from the floor. Some of what we will be doing is to ask this region of our spine to be stabilized by the breath. So sensing that corset on the exhale, the diaphragm moving straight down on the inhale. Now walk your feet in. Keep your left foot on the floor. And bend your right knee in towards your chest. As you bend your right knee in towards your chest, notice the normal tendency of the low back to flex towards the spine and resist that. So keep that slight tone of the transverse abdominis, the front of the core, to keep the lower ribs knitting in and the lower back off the floor. So keeping the pelvis in neutral, the rib cage in neutral. And as you inhale, press your knee into your hands and allow your elbows to straighten. As you exhale, bend your elbows out, drawing your knee in. So using the rate of your own breath to move into this slightly less flexed position as you move the knee away, and the more flexed hip position as you move the knee in. As you do this, notice the tendency of the desire to flex your spine and resist that. So maintain the natural curve of the low back being slightly away from the floor, maintaining neutral in pelvis and ribs. The next time you draw your knee in, keep it there and take your belt And wrap your belt around the ball mount of your foot. So make sure it's not the arch and it's not the heel. It's the ball mount of the foot. And then when you have the belt there, extend the leg above your hip. Again, notice the tendency to want to flex and resist using the core muscles. So with the right leg straight, keeping the lower back off the floor, hinge from your hip to bend your knee slightly. And then as you straighten your leg, use the pushing of the ball mount into the belt to straighten the leg. So now moving between knee flexion, deepening of hip flexion, and then pressing the ball mount into the belt to straighten the leg. So there's an active awareness of the ball mount of the foot pressing to create engagement of your quad, the front of your thigh, and your hamstring, the back of your thigh. So can you feel that relationship between the pressing of the ball mount into the belt and the engagement of the front and the back of your thigh, your quads and your hamstrings? Next time you straighten, stay straight. Keep the knee straight. If you need to back the heel away from the hips, you can, but try to work this with a straight knee if you're able to. Check your spine. We're staying in neutral. And now push the ball mount of your foot into the belt to plantar flex your ankle, or if it helps, create Barbie doll foot. And then pull the belt to now draw the heel towards your head or your toes towards your head to create dorsiflexion. Push the ball mount into the belt to create plantar flexion. Really push up, feeling where this shows up in your body, and then use the belt to pull the ankle into dorsiflexion. So knee remains straight as we alternate between plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Feeling as we create plantar flexion, really pushing the ball mount of the foot up into the belt, creating tension or engagement of your calf muscles. And again, following that connection down into the upper leg, noticing how this feels in your quads and your hamstrings, so the back and the front of your thigh. Next time you straighten your or plantar flex, so create that Barbie doll toe, stay there and pull the leg a little closer. And as you pull the leg a little closer, allow now your spine to move into flexion. So push the lower back towards the floor. As you exhale, curl your head and your chest off the floor, lifting your knee towards your head towards your knee. Keep pushing the foot up into the belt and straighten your left leg down to the ground. You may hover the left leg about an inch off the floor to create a little bit more core awareness. And then remove the belt off of the foot and reach the hands beyond your right leg as you curl up a little bit more. Keep plantar flexing the foot. So push the ball mount of the toes up towards the ceiling, firming the front and back of your thigh. One more breath, lift a little higher. And then as you exhale, lower the left foot to the ground, lower your head and your chest down. Keep your right leg straight as you slowly, keeping that plantar flexion in the ankle, lower the leg to the ground. Notice the tendency of the ribs to flare and the low back to press down. Lift the low back without flaring the ribs as you touch down. Draw the right knee up, foot to the ground. Left knee in towards the chest. Wrap your fingers around the front of your shin. Find the lower back slightly away from the floor. So core engagement. And then as you inhale, press the shin into the hands. And as you exhale, bend the elbows out, draw the knee in and up. As you move back and forth, find that relationship of maintaining awareness of the core to keep from from flexing the front, the lower back. Also feeling the relationship of the hip being in flexion without the need to flex the spine. Next time you draw the knee in, keep it in, take your belt and wrap it around the ball mount of your left foot, extend the left leg above your hip, wherever you can find a straight knee. So the further away it is from your head, you may be able to find more straight. Keep the lower back off the floor and bend the knee towards the chest, and then push the ball mounts of the foot into the belt to straighten. So explore this. You're really feeling the straightening of the leg come from the pushing of the ball mount into the belt. And the knee doesn't bend that deep. Like the knee is only bending maybe 2 or 3 inches, and the heel doesn't drop towards the floor. So the foot continues to press up towards the sky as you draw the knee towards your chest, right? And next time you lift up, stay up, check your lower back. And now plantar flex the ankle by pushing the ball of your foot into the belt, and then use tension on the belt to create dorsiflexion. So you feel that activation of the calf muscles as you plantar flex, and you feel the stretch in the calf as you dorsiflex. There's tension on the belt at the whole time in order to create resistance, in order to create activation in the back of the leg, all the way up into the quads and the hamstrings as you point and flex. Next time you plantar flex, so that Barbie doll toe, keep the foot there. Start to move the lower back towards the floor. You can go ahead and straighten the right leg here. And then continue to push the ball mount of the foot into the belt. Flex the spine a little bit more as you lift your head and chest off the floor. You can pull the knee closer to your head as you're able. Hover your right foot off the ground. Keep pushing the foot up into the belt, feeling that activation go all the way up to the top of your thigh. And you can release the belt, reach the arms forward, beyond your leg. Breathe. Keep pushing the foot up. Feel the thigh muscles engage. And as you inhale, lift a little higher. Exhale, roll your spine down. Lower your right foot to the ground. And then slowly, with core awareness, low back off the floor, lower your left leg down to the ground. Bend both knees. Hug the knees in towards the chest, let the spine flex, and rock a little side to side. Grab behind the knees, rock up and forward into a seated position. You can go ahead and move the blocks to the front of your mat, so they're there when we need them. And tuck your toes under. Start to push the heels back as you push your hips back towards your heels. So we're not going into a child's pose or kind of in a calf stretch is what you should be feeling. Move the toes forward towards the front of your mat as you push the heels further back. So allow the calf muscles to stretch. So really reach the heels back as if the knees were going to lift off the floor, but keep them on the floor and push your toes forward. You can walk your hands back a little closer to your hips and lift up onto your fingertips. This may increase the intensity of the stretch of the calf. So in our bodies, we have a myofascial line that goes all the way up the backs and starts in the bottom of your feet, comes over the ends of your heels, kind of with the Achilles tendon, and then goes all the way up the backs of the legs and into the hips, and then eventually arising at the head. So when you stretch something at the bottom of the chain, the feet, it can have an effect on your hamstrings. Walk the hands forward a little bit. Spread your fingers wide. Walk your knees back a little bit. Keep your toes tucked under, and then lift up and back into downward facing dog. Separate your feet slightly wider than hip distance apart, or you can think outer hips. Spread your fingers wide. Press down through your hands. Lift high up onto your toes. Tops of the thigh bones press back into your hamstrings. So you feel a deepening of the hinge at the hip. Lift and spread your sit bones. And then just bend your knees just slightly. So your belly will rest between your thighs. And then reach the heels down as you move towards straightening your legs. So do this a few times. The shoulders don't move. The spine doesn't move. The hips don't move. They might lower slightly, but you're not lessening the hinge. You're just flexing the knees and the hips. Next time you press up, stay up. Find a little bit more of the thigh bones pressing back and the sit bones spreading, and then lower your heels towards the ground. Press down through the ball mounts of your feet to lift back up onto your toes. Press the heels towards the floor. If the heels land, you can lift your toes and press the heels back more. Otherwise, just continue to move up onto the toes, pressing the ball mounts of your feet down, and then lowering the heels towards the ground. Maybe lifting toes if they land. Good. Walk your feet up halfway. Walk your hands back halfway, coming into a wider stance in your forward fold. So feet are still hip distance apart. Bend the knees forward, rest your belly between your thighs. Press through the ball mounts of your feet to straighten your knees as you bring your hands to your shin. So we're coming into basically a back bend in the spine, right? So your lower back is arched, your chest is lifting up. You still have a little bit of tone at the rib cage, the front of the rib cage. Head is looking, gaze is beyond the front of your mat. Press your shins into your hands and your hands into your shins and stretch your spine a little bit more. As you exhale, fold. Knees can bend if they need to. Inhale, bring your hands to your shins. Push the knees straight as you come back up into that back bend. And then as you exhale, fold. If you need to bend the knees on the flexion of the spine, you can do so. Hands to your shins. Come back up into the back bend. So the back bend is in the spine. The entire spine is arched. Good. Lower down. If knees need to bend, they can bend. Press down through your feet strongly. Inhale, reach up, stretch up, arms come over your head, gaze up. Exhale, hands to heart center. Press down through your feet. So we really want to feel the connection of the feet pressing down and that creating more space or more activation in your thighs so that it creates more space in those same regions. The wider the feet are apart, the less challenging it is in the thigh muscles. So press down, reach the arms up, send the hips back, hinge from the hips, fold forward. Fold halfway. Hands to your shins, lift up into a back bend. Tone the lower belly, reach the hands back, reach the head forward. So now we're asking the core to help us out a little bit, stabilize us here. Exhale, fold. Inhale, lift up, reach up, arms over your head, gaze up. Exhale, hands to heart center. So we'll do this one more time. Hands beside your hips. Press down strongly through your feet to activate your thigh muscles. Inhale, reach up, stretch up. Allow the hips to move back in space as you hinge from your hips and fold forward. Hands to your shins, come up halfway. Find your back bend, find your core. Reach the fingers back, head forward, sit bones back. Pause. Exhale, hands release to the floor and step back into downward facing dog. Shift your weight onto your left foot. Keep your knees together and just bend your right knee. So the knees stay together. So you're not lifting the knee up. Knees stay together. Press the top of your left leg bone back. Lift up onto your left toes. Lower the heels towards the ground. Press to the ball mount of your foot to lift. The shoulders don't move, the spine doesn't move. Just activating as we lift, as we press down the back of the calf, and then stretching the back of the calf as we lower down. Lift up one more time, gaze forward. Step your right foot halfway up and lower the knee to the ground, left knee to the ground. Shift to where your left hip is directly above your left knee. So you're not forward, hips not forward, it's directly up, toes stay tucked. Right heel's directly below your right knee. So we've done this before, but it's been a while. Not so worried about this. I'm going to switch so you can see, but watch first. The action we're trying to create is in the front and the back of the knee that's on the floor. So for this, you're going to reach your sit bones straight back. I can go back pretty far. You might only be able to go back this far. And as you come forward, the quad, or you can think of your pocket pushing forward. So when you're ready, reach your sit bones straight back and then push the leg bone forward to come upright. So hinge the hip, sit bone reaches towards your heel, push your pocket forward to come up. Do this a few more times. You should feel some activation in your quad as you move the sit bone back, and you should feel some activation in your glute as you push the quad forward. Both are working in either direction, but we're working with eccentric versus concentric in opposing ways. So these two muscles are opposites, they're antagonistic, but they work with the opposite range when they move. Next time you rock forward, stay forward. Point your toes back, lean forward, grab your two blocks, and bring them on either side of your right foot. I'm going to switch back to my right leg so you can again see. Keeping your left hip above your left knee, walk your right foot forward until it's straight. And then flex your ankle. Keep the knee above the hip and walk it forward a little bit more. So your right heel forward a little bit more. Press the ankle down. Drag the toes towards your head. Drag the heel back. So you're creating scissoring action of your inner thighs to move the pelvis forward. Inhale, press down through the block. Start to stretch your spine or your chest towards your toes. So again, you're creating an extension in your spine, kind of like a back bend. As you exhale, bend the elbows back, only to the point where you can maintain more of that extension. It'll start to flex, but resist going all the way into flexion. And you're just bending the elbows back and then pushing up. Keep the right leg active. So front of the thigh is engaged, hamstrings are engaged. That's that pushing of the heel down and dragging it back. Next time you lower down, stay down. Maybe take the blocks lower and walk them further forward. Push down through your heel. Stretch your chest towards your foot, and then start to flex the spine as you lower the head towards your knee. Notice the tendency to start to move into that outer left hip. And again, scissor the inner thighs together to stay active. Press the hands down, come up. Right foot back to the floor. Move the blocks back to the front of your mat. Lean forward, tuck the back toe under, lift the back knee. Start to walk your hands and your feet to face the long edge of your mat. It'll be on the left side of your mat. I'm going to flip so I'm facing you and I'm not mooning you. Come up onto fingertips. So wide leg stance. This is Parsvottanasana. Press down through your inner edge of your foot. Roll your inner thighs back. Press down through the outer edge and hug your outer hips in. As you exhale, lower your head towards the floor. Take your hands between your feet. Firm the front of your thighs. Press the heels down and lift the back of your thighs. Hands forward, come up halfway. Find that back bend in your spine. So extension, you can lift up onto your fingertips. Tone your lower belly. Bring one hand to your hip. Bring the other hand to your hip and lift all the way up. Interlace your fingers behind your back. So create the fist behind your back. Move the fist down towards the floor. Top of the collarbones lift. Press your feet down. Inner thighs, outer thighs. Lift up, arch back. Hinge from your hips. Keep your back bend as long as you can. And then when you get to the point where you have to flex, let the head release towards the floor. Keep drawing shoulder blades towards your hips, which is down your back, but feels up in this position. Front of the thighs engaged, back of the thighs engaged. Release your hands to the floor, lift up halfway. Turn your toes towards the front of your mat and walk your hands on either side of your right foot. Step back into downward facing dog. Come up onto your toes, reach your heels down. Come up onto your toes, reach your heels down. So this is an exploration of opening. So notice what you notice. Bring your weight to your right foot. Kick your left heel towards your hip as you keep your knees together. Press the front of the right leg bone back. Lift and spread the sit bones. Lift up onto your right toes. Reach the heel down. So press to the ball mount of the foot to lift the heel and then lower down. Press up, look between your hands, step your left foot halfway up and lower your right knee to the ground. Take the blocks, bring them on either side. And we're going to lift up into this position where both knees are bent at 90 degrees. I'm going to switch so I'm not uneven. So make sure that your left hip or your right hip is directly above your right knee. Hands to heart. As you hinge from your right hip, reach your right sit bone towards your left heel. Press the leg bone forward as if you're trying to push the pocket forward and move back and forth. So we're not worried about straightening the front knee. We're not worried about creating really anything in the front hip other than the hips stay in that midline plane. Really exaggerate the pushing of the leg bone forward as you come up and the glute squeezing. Exaggerate reaching the sit bone towards the heel as you dip back. Next time you come forward, stay forward. Bring the hands to the blocks, point your right toes. You walk your toes forward to straighten your left leg. Keep your right knee, hip directly over your right knee, and then flex your ankle. Reach your toes towards your head. Press the heel down and drag it back. Scissor your inner thighs towards each other or squeeze your inner thighs together. Reach your heart towards your toes, so find an extension in your spine, and then start to fold. Push the hands down to straighten your elbow. So create as much extension in the spine as you can, right? So if you are flexing in your spine, try just to reach the chest forward. So instead of moving in and out of it, try more to press the heart forward rather than to worry about taking it deep, right? So we're really trying to find extension in the spine and forward folds because it's an intense stretch of the side. And the more extended the spine is, the more intense the stretch is in the spine. Go ahead and bend your front knee. Bring the blocks towards the front of your mat. Step back now into plank pose. Lift the tops of the thighs, so engage the hamstrings. Firm the front of the thighs to lift even higher. Lower down chaturanga. Lower all the way down. Point the toes back, firm the thighs, so press the leg bones down, pubic bone down. Inhale, press up cobra. Exhale down. So I'll try to get you as much extension in the spine as we can, and an actual back bend, so lift up cobra, where the hips are also an extension. Down. One more time, lift up. Come through hands and knees, and press back into downward facing dog. Lift up onto the toes. Firm the thighs, press the leg bones back, lift and spread, heels towards the ground. Notice what you notice. Lift up onto your toes, gaze between your thumbs. Bend your knees, step or hop to the front of your mat. Inhale, lift up halfway. Stretch the spine, so exaggerate the extension throughout the spine. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach up, stretch up, arms come up, hands to heart center. All right. Take your left hand behind your back. So kind of in that lower back region. You're going to interlace your fingers with the right hand and pull it over. So the fist comes to the side body. And then lengthen your spine. So don't let it push your spine into a side flexion. Bend your knees slightly. Balance on your right foot. Continue to push the region where your hand is into your hand as you lift the left knee forward. Cross. And instead of linking the foot back, just take it out to the side. Push the foot into the shin. Squeeze your inner thighs together. So feel that sensation of the inner thighs squeezing together and the knees pushing out to center the hips, right? So notice the tendency of that left hip to pop out and keep pushing the hip towards the hand. Squeeze the inner thighs and wrap the inner thighs in and down to sink a little deeper. So notice the activation of your thighs in relation to your hips. And then lift up and release the left foot down. Switch the interlacing of your fingers and then switch the fist to the other side. So use the hand to pull the hand as far over to the side as you can. And then keep the fist in your side body. Bend your knees. Start to roll your inner thighs down and in to sink a little deeper. Weight on the left foot. Right knee forward and cross. Foot to the outer shin. Squeeze the inner thighs together and roll them down to sink a little deeper. Push the knees out to engage the outer hips to stabilize. So feel what the sensation feels like in your body. These are the same kind of actions that we're using in the thighs when we move towards our pulse. Lift up and release. Come to the front of your mat if you're not already there. Press down through your feet. Firm your thighs front and back. Inhale, reach up, stretch up. Push the hips back and hinge from your hip creases to fold forward. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, step to the back of your mat, plank pulse. And lower down, halfway chaturanga. Lower all the way down, feet strong, thighs strong. Inhale, press up, cobra, core strong. Lower down. Shoulder blades down your back, chest lifts, cobra. Lower down. One more time, lift up. Tuck your toes under, plank pose, down dog. Lift high up onto your toes, firm the thighs, press the leg bones back, lift and spread, lower the heels towards the ground. Shift the weight onto your left foot. Lift your right leg up parallel to the ground. Press the hips up and back. Press down through your left toes, lift up onto your toes. Keep pressing the top of the leg bone back. Lower down. Press down, lift up, lower down. Lift the leg a little higher. Keep the pelvis squared towards the floor. Press down through your left ball mount of your foot. Lift up, lower down. Lift up, gaze between your thumbs, right toes to right thumb. Separate your feet about hip distance apart. Take your blocks on either side of your right foot. Lift your hips a little higher. Lower the left heel, or step the left foot up just about an inch. Lower the heel down. And lift all the way up. Straighten the front leg. So you may need to adjust your stance in order to completely square your hips towards the front of your mat. That same awareness of the squeezing of the thighs when we were doing eagle pose, create that here. So squeeze your inner thighs together. And you'll notice this positions the hips a little bit more towards the front of your mat. Hands to your hips, tone pubic bone up, ribs down and in. Bend the front knee just a couple of inches, so not much. Press to the ball mount of your foot to straighten your leg. Bend the knee just a couple of inches. Push through the ball mount of your foot to straighten the leg. So find that connection. Rather than just straightening your knee, use the foot pressing down to straighten the knee. Straight, I'm going to move the block so you can see. Now with the knee straight, lift the heel by pressing down through the ball mount of your foot. Lower the heel. Press down, lift the heel. Lower the heel. Press down, lift the foot. Bend the knee. Lower the heel. Lift the heel. Lower. Lift. Lower. Lift. Keep squeezing the inner thighs together. Heels lifted. Keep the heel lifted as you straighten your leg. Lower the heel down. Woo! Hands to your hips. Arch back slightly. As you exhale, push your feet down, squeeze the inner thighs, lower halfway. Keep a slight bend in your front knee, push the ball mount of your right foot down, pull the outer hip back. Hands to the blocks. Press the hands into the blocks, stretch the spine longer, so find extension. Keep the legs engaged, and now bend the elbows back as you start to flex. From the fronts of your thighs, from the backs of your thighs. Feet press down, hips hug in. Straighten the spine. So coming back into extension. Squeeze the inner thighs together, hug the hips in, one hand to the hip, other hand to the hip, lift up. Inhale, reach the arms over the head, bend into the front knee. As you exhale, hands behind your back, press the fist towards your thigh, lift the chest, keep the front knee bent as you now fold. Let the head move towards your shin. Hug the hips in. Shoulders down your back, head stretches towards your foot. Release hands to the blocks, move the blocks out of the way, and step back into downward facing dog. Bend one knee and then the other. So let the tension go. You may really need that calf stretch right now. You may really need the hip stretch right now. Shift the weight into your right foot. Press the front of the leg bone back, hug the outer right hip in, lift the left leg halfway, so parallel to the floor. Lift up onto your right toes, lower down. So keep the shoulders in line with the hips and the wrist. So as you lift up onto the toes, don't let the shoulders move forward. Lift the leg a little higher and continue to lift up and down. Next time you lift up, gaze up, left foot to left thumb. Step your right foot up just about an inch. Blocks on either side of your front foot. Straighten the legs. Squeeze your inner thighs together, firm the thighs, and come up.
I'm sorry, can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
When we're in this position, my back leg was like literally vibrating and on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's the side that we're stretching. It's not the front leg. This is what we're stretching.
Okay,
it's
so
an
that's
intense side stretch.
So that's not abnormal. Okay, thank you.
Feeling what you're supposed to feel.
Okay, just making sure.
And no, it's a great question, because I think we think that the side, that the stretch is in the hamstring, and it is, but the name of the pose is intense side stretch, right? So the side is the back hip. It's intense. So yeah, your back leg is vibrating. All right, so coming all the way up. Feet are about hip distance apart. That gives you a little bit more balance. Start to squeeze the inner thighs together. Feel that. Square the hips towards the front of the mat. Press down through your feet. And just a slight bend in the front knee. To straighten the knee, push the ball mount of the foot down. And I feel it here too, right? And we did this when we were doing the other thing. It's more the stabilizing leg, which is the back leg, that's working harder for me when I'm doing this. But as I'm doing this, I'm creating more space for plantar flexion and hamstring stretch to happen. Next time you bend your knee, stay bent. Lift your heel off the ground and push it down. So press through the ball mount to lift the heel and then lower the heel. And yeah, this back leg is super strong right now. I mean, it might not feel super strong, but it's pretty much taking all the weight as you pump. Lift up onto your heel, keep your heel up, push the ball mount down as you straighten the leg. And now I got a lot going on in the front leg, but a lot the heel, scissor the inner thighs together again, hands to the hips, or actually interlace the fingers. No, hands to the hips. Stretch the front of the spine. So we're creating the back bend, the extension. Keep the extension, keep squeezing the thighs, fold forward halfway. Now both hips have to stabilize you in this extended or this core of the forward fold. Then hands to the ground or to the blocks. Press the hands down, stretch the spine long, squeeze the inner thighs together. So reset, and then begin to fold the spine. Breathe. Push the outer edge of the back foot down. Squeeze the inner thighs together. Feel that. Adjust the hips. Come up halfway. Slight micro bend in the front knee. Stretch the spine long. Find the core. Bring one hand to your hip. Other hand to the hip. Use the legs pressing down to lift up. Bend the front knee over the ankle joint. Hands behind the back, interlace the fingers the weird way. Punch the fist down towards your thigh, lift your chest, so back bend, and then moving again into a forward fold with the knee bent. Head reaches towards your foot, shoulder inside your knee, back leg still strong. Release the hands to the blocks, move the blocks to the front of your mat. Step back to plank, lower down chaturanga, either up dog or cobra, and then stretch hips back and up, down dog. Move, bending one knee and then the other. And yeah, where I feel this more is in the quad of the leg that was just back. Bend the knees to the floor. Keep the toes tucked, send the hips back. So stretch the quads. Knees all the way to the floor. Stretch the hips all the way back with the toes tucked. So stretch the quads out. Stretch the calves out. And then point the toes back and sit back into child's pose. Take a few breaths here. And come up and watch. For time's sake, I don't have time to take you through a full shoulder kind of opening. So I'm just going to give you a couple of options. We're going to go into that pose one more time. We're not going to stay there quite as long as we did the last time. We're going to weave it into more or less of a flow. But the hand position, the traditional hand position for Parsvottanasana is with the hands in internal rotation. So to find that, you'd push your hands back. And then you kind of lean forward to swing your hands up your back into prayer. So if this is something that's natural for you, which it's not for most people, you can opt to use this. If this is not, you can either grasp your wrist or you can grasp your elbows. So normally I would go through a shoulder thing to get that there a little bit more. We did this and we did this, but if that wasn't enough to get you to this, then opt for one of these others. All right, ready? Hands to the floor, tabletop. Tuck the toes under, lift the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Press thigh bones back, lift and spread your sit bones. Weight onto your left foot. Reach your right leg up and back, three-legged dog. Little extension, bend the knee, knee towards the sky, heel to the opposite hip. Keep the left leg active. Inhale, square the hips, straighten the legs, point the toe. Exhale, round knee to nose, and step your right foot to your right thumb. Step your left foot up slightly, drop the heel down and in, Toes point to the left corner of your mat. As you straighten your right leg, lift all the way up. Bring the hands, you can kind of lean forward, bring the hands back and up into that position. Press the spine towards your hands. Inhale, arch back, so find a back bend. Squeeze the inner thighs together, stabilize. As you exhale, keep your back bend as you hinge forward halfway, hold. Squeeze the inner thighs together, stretch the spine long. Inhale. As you exhale, fold all the way. So find flexion in your spine to the point that you can. Let your knee bend as you need it to, but moving towards straight. Inhale, lift up just a little to stretch the spine a little longer. Squeeze the thighs, hips back, fold again. Bend the front, or firm the front thigh, lift up halfway, so back into that back bend. Then bend the front knee. Come onto your back toes. Firm the outer right hip. As you lift the left leg off the ground, transition into Virabhadrasana 1. Maybe right knee bend, straightens, maybe it's slightly bent. Release the hands to the floor. Stretch, left leg as high up towards the sky as you can. So standing split. Reach the head down as you reach the feet up. Bend the front knee, step the left foot to the back of the mat. Plank pose, chaturanga, up dog, and down dog. Intense stretch of the side. Weight to the left, right foot. Inhale, reach your left leg up and back, three-legged dog. Bend the knee, kick the heel to the opposite hip, knee to the sky. Hug the outer right hip in. Inhale, straighten, square the hips. Gaze forward, lift up onto the toe as you step your left foot up between to your left thumb. Right toe up slightly, heel down and in, toe to the left corner of your mat. Squeeze the thighs together. Stretch the spine. Press down through your front foot to lift all the way up. Find your hands up your spine. Press down through the feet, squeeze the thighs. Inhale, arch back. Exhale, keep squeezing the thighs together as you fold halfway. Spine and extension. Pause. Inhale, stretch the spine a little longer, hips roll back, squeeze together, and then exhale, fold. Press down through the ball mount of your feet. Lift up just a little to create a little bit more length in the spine, then fold and hold. Keep the scissoring of the inner thighs, hugging of the outer hips. Lift up halfway, pause. Bend your front knee. Come on to your right toes. Hug your hips or squeeze your thighs together. Shift forward, lift your back leg. Virabhadrasana 3, warrior 3. Stretch your spine, reach your heel. Hands release to the floor. Stretch the right leg up towards the sky, head towards the floor. Stretch. Bend the front knee. Step back to plank. Lower down chaturanga. Inhale, up dog or cobra. Exhale, down dog. Check out your down dog. Thighs are still strong. Sit bones still lift. Spine is still long. Bend the knees to the floor. Knees wide, toes touch. Child's pose. Walk your hands back as you come upright. Cross your ankles and sit back. Bring your feet out in front of you. Feet wide, so mat distance apart. Hands behind your hips. Just drop both of your knees over to the right. So you're creating a little extension in the front of your left hip. You can lower down onto your right elbow and reach the left hand back behind you. So create a little bit more of the knee drawing down to create a little bit more space in the front of the hip. Bring the left hand forward and use that to press back up, and then switch to the other side. So right knee comes down. Bring your hands behind your back. Lower down onto your left elbow. Walk the right hand back a little bit more as you push your right knee towards the sky and push the right hip, or towards the floor as you push your right hip forward. So creating some space on the front of your hip. So kind of combining a back bend and a twist. And drop both elbows to the floor as you bring the knees back to center. Roll back onto your back. A quick happy baby just to get a little external rotation in the hips. Countering so much of the flexion and internal rotation in the hips as we make our way down into Shavasana. So when you're ready, you can stretch your legs long, arms down beside your body, feeling the weight of your back body, those places of your body that were intensely stretched, but also intensely like strong, right? To create that, to create the ability to create that intensity of whatever we felt. It was not just a passive stretch, right? There had to be that combination of creating the stability, the core engagement, the inner thighs, the adductors working to stabilize the hips closer to neutral. And you felt then that natural response of your outer hips to hold you upright. So we were intensely stretching, yes, but we were also intensely engaging. My favorite yoga theme, yoga philosophy, comes from yoga philosophy, is the Sthira Sukham Asanam. That a pose is sthira, stable, solid, strong. And a pose that is balanced also is sukham, easeful, lengthening, spacious. And that you can't really have one without the other. But it's that balance between the two that creates the openness in the hips, the openness in the mind. You have to have a steady mind in meditation. But if we work too intently, if we only focus on a steady mind, that can become distracting in our meditation. We also have to have that sense of ease, of opening. And life is kind of like that too. When we work too hard at something, that can be unbalanced. It can create stress. When we don't work enough, that can have the same effect. It's that balance between steady and ease. Reach the arms up beside the ears. Stretch through heels or toes, finding inner body length. As you exhale, bend your knees and roll onto your side body. Using your hands, slowly come up into a seated position. Bringing the hands to meet at heart center, feeling a sense of self meet self. Bowing into heart center, honoring the space, this time that you've made for practice, for your body, for your minds, for community. Thank you so much. The divine in me honors the divine in you. Namaste.